Let's look at the details of the global settings. So go ahead and click Settings. And here we can program our expression pedals. So we'll define the type of expression pedal: continuous, latch, momentary, single shot, or a trigger. We can establish a MIDI channel that we're sending it to, and then a data channel. A CC number. So for instance, we'll have a continuous controller feeding off of MIDI channel 1, and it's CC number 7, which is typically assigned to volume. So this might be your volume pedal. So that's pretty straightforward. A new feature in the Plus series is auto calibrate. If you turn auto calibrate on, then every time you power up the Liquid Foot, it will automatically just read whatever pedals plugged into it. So you can swap pedals randomly. And what you need to do is just swing your pedal from toe to heel just once, and it's automatically calibrated. If you're plugging a switch in, just click the switch once and it'll automatically calibrate. So that's how you program expression pedals. The hardware itself, the default SysX ID is 124. The default MIDI channel for receiving commands from other devices, like a sequencer or a computer or something, into a Liquid Foot is channel 16, which is usually not used by any other device. You could turn MIDI through on or off. You can allow the Liquid Foot to accept MIDI commands coming into it or block them, which is different from MIDI through. Allow MIDI means you can send, for instance, like a program change message to the Liquid Foot, and it'll actually change presets or songs depending on what mode it's in. And so by default we block that. Sync mode, you can be a master, an expander, or none of the above. If you're plugged into multiple devices, you'll define which unit this is. If it is a master, you'll give it a network ID. You can have up to 20 Liquid Foot devices plugged in together. NetEnd is a proprietary setting. Depending on what modules you have plugged into your device, the module will tell you whether to turn this on or leave it off. And for programmability purposes, you can define the start page for the Liquid Foot. And what that really means is not the start page, it's actually the button within the page. So by default, a Liquid Foot always starts at number 1. And if I was to go to a page to explain that, button number 1 at the bottom of your foot controller is usually assigned to number 1. However, but just by changing that setting, you can have the physical button 1 start anywhere from 1 through 48. Now why is that? Because let's say we changed it to start at 13. Then I can have a page defined, and if I physically start the Liquid Foot with a start value of 13, then it's actually going to process these commands right here as I'm stepping on the physical buttons of the Liquid Foot. So if you have an expander, usually your master is going to be 1 through 12. Your next expander is going to be 13 through 25, and then 25 and on. I got to fix those numberings. And that's how you can control what the physical buttons control on a particular page. So this gives a lot of power really quick, especially if you're modifying pages to handle multiple settings. You can create a page with one page having multiple layouts, and just by changing that value you can have access to those layouts without doing any additional programming. Second hold time, you can set this, by default it's set to 1.5 seconds, and that's how long you step on a button to trigger function number 2. Button delay, most folks won't touch this setting, but I have it defaulted to 40 milliseconds. That's the amount of time it takes before it processes another command. So if you're stepping on an IA switch and then you step on another one, this is the default. If it's too low, you're going to start triggering multiple events faster than your foot can handle. So it's kind of, I made this a parameter just because different people have different feels with their foot, and 40 seems to be the right number for most people. If you have a tuner, just put in the device that you're using for the source of that information. The default page is the page it loads when you power on the unit. Usually you'll just leave that one. Group, make or break. This is a new feature. With groups, typically when you have a group, only one of the buttons of the group can be turned on at one time, and all the rest have to be off. If you're switching what is on and off, so I press a button within a group and it was off and now I'm turning it on, you have two options now. I can make that connection, which means let's say I press button number 2, I'll trigger button number 2 and I'll make that set of IA switches, if that's what it is, trigger first, and then I'll break whatever I'm shutting off and trigger the off messages there. This is important if you're connecting amp looping and so forth. There are times when you'll want to connect the new amp first, so I'll make that connection, then break the other amp connection, or vice versa. I'll want to shut the other amp connection off first, so I'll break it, and then I'll make whatever I'm turning on and send those messages. So again, you can make and then break, or break and then make. Force IA sends, this just overrides whatever at the preset level. Follow scroll we'll talk about later. Show bypass as off. If I have an IA switch that's in bypass mode, all these red bubbles are in bypass mode, I could just have them show as off on the physical foot controller. So you can shut the red or whatever color you assign it to and have them turn off. So that's this switch. Block preset save and copy. If you're holding a preset button down on a page for more than 3 seconds, it'll automatically go into save copy mode, so you can save your current IA states and or copy it to a new location. And you can block that if you're a lead foot and you like to keep your foot on the switch. It's just how you work with it. Then go ahead and shut that off and it won't trigger that automatically. Block off triggering. If you turn this on, it'll block sending any IA switches that are off. So here's an example. I have a couple of IA slots in bypass state, some in on, and then all these are grayed out or off. If I turn block on, then it'll only send the bypass messages, which are the off messages. It'll send the on messages for this IA switch slot. But anything that's in the off state, it will not send any information. And that's typically how you want it to work. Clear LCD when off. If you have an IA slot that's in an off state, so let's say 8, 5, and 9 in this particular preset, then for any physical button on a page that's connected to those IA slots in an off state, if this command is triggered on, then it will show a blank screen. It'll be off and there will be no text. If you leave it default, which basically means don't clear the LCD, then you'll see the name of the IA slot, the nickname, in the LCD above the button. Block multiple preset presses. If you don't want to allow a preset to get re-triggered twice in a row, then just block multiple presses. And preset buttons, you have default colors. You can assign it any of the 15 color states, and both for when it's selected and then when it's non-selected. By default, the selected preset is like a dimmed purple, and the non-selected presets are in a bright purple. So they're easy to identify on the pedal board. You can just change them to be whatever you want. For each MIDI channel that the Liquid Foot controls, you can turn bypass offsets on and off at a channel level. So for preset programming, you might see you might have an effect device that goes from 1 to 128. Some devices go from 0 to 127. If you have a device that goes from 1 to 128, just select it as a +1 offset. Otherwise, it starts at 0. And then you can give your MIDI channels device names, and it's good to do that just so you can. It's easier to reference your MIDI channels and what's plugged into them. Okay, and down in the lower fourth of the screen, you have each of the special menus that can show up on a physical button, which you would define at a page layout. And each of those buttons can have a different color, so you can color code every special function that you have to whatever you want it to be. By default, they're all a dimmed yellow, and but to go ahead and, so maybe your preset up button, you want it to be a cyan, your preset down, you want it to be purple, and so on. You just go ahead and change it there. So that's how you program your global settings.